Kiddos, it's Bonus Mom, and it is time for a fun fall project, and I've got one for us. This delightful little crocheted pumpkin could make a great little fall decoration to sit on your desk, maybe a gift for a teacher, yeah, grandma. Something make you think about fall that's coming. So we're gonna make this pumpkin today. I have laid out here what you will need to do that. You need some yarn, and you don't have to use orange. You can use any color that you want, but I'm going to be using orange medium weight yarn today. Some brown or whatever color you like, medium weight yarn. Just a scrap is fine for our little stem. Some green, if you like, scrap for the leaves we'll be making. And then for these cute little curly cues that just kind of add their own special little touch, you will need a ball of twine and a knitting needle, a pencil, a dowel rod, anything that's round that you can wrap this thing around. Bonus Mom trying to find the right words. Okay, work with me on this. It's a round thing. We're going to wrap the twine around it. We use a couple of needles and scissors. I use yarn for my stitch markers. That's it. We're going to need a bowl of water, but I can get that out because if I had gotten it out and sat it in front of you, I would have spilled it all over me, and that would have been a dreadful mess. So let's get ready. Let's make a pumpkin. Hey kiddos, so the oopsies are at it again. I should have mentioned when you're making the curly cue twine, you're going to need some clips or some scotch tape or masking tape to hold it to your knitting needle. I should have mentioned that. Oh, and one other thing, yeah. You're going to need some polyfill to stuff the pumpkin. I forgot about that part too. Now, some folks actually save their yarn scraps. I don't happen to have any around here, and they'll shove yarn scraps into things. And with this being single crochet and done with like an H-hook and fairly tight, yeah, you could do that. You could actually use your yarn scraps, but it would be firmer. I kind of prefer the polyfill because it's gushier. I hate to mess with this stuff. It drives me crazy, but it does give me the look I want. So remember that, clips, fiber fill, and a bowl of water, and you're good to go. As we begin to work on our pumpkin, I'm going to start with making the curly cue, because after I do what I do to get the twine ready to be curly, it's got to go away and wait for a couple of days and dry. So let's do this part first. So I have my twine. I'm using a knitting needle. You could use a pencil. If you use something smaller, this is like a size 15 boy knitting needle. Whatever size you use, your loops are going to be either smaller or wider. 2 clips to put on each end of what I'm making. And all you do to this, it is so simple. Unravel some twine, and if I were doing this, I would go ahead, and make a lot, because I might want to do more than one pumpkin. I wouldn't just do one strand of this at the time. It'll last, like if I weren't going to be using this immediately, I probably wouldn't take it off the yarning needle, but since knitting, not yarning. Bonus Mom goes for the words again. But since this happens to be the only one of these I have, I am not a knitter. I took that off so I can reuse it. So, got my twine. Let me get the end of it. All I'm going to do with this twine is get it wet. I'm not like soaking it. I'm not, leaving it for days, whatever. I'm just getting it wet. And then I'm going to wrap it around my knitting needle. Okay, so it's a sloppy mess, okay? So nobody said crafting doesn't make a mess, did they? No, they never said that. I'm holding this at one end till you get comfortable with the fact that you can stick a clip on it. And then I'm going to continue to wet and wrap. And I'm going to do the whole length of the knitting needle. complicated stuff, right? Oh, now I'm getting into dry twine. You could just cut off 20 feet or something, I don't know, some amount, and just stick it in a bowl of water instead of what I'm standing here sloshing the water all over the place. You get to do it however you want. I used to play in mud puddles when I was a kid, and I like playing in this water bowl, okay? Now, I think I've been pretty good at getting this thing wet, but if I have any doubts about it at all, when I get finished, let me scrunch it up, get as much on here as I can, because if I'm going to take the time to do it, excuse me, I had to straighten my yarn out. Twine. I keep saying yarn. I'm so fixated on yarn. I'm going to re-wet with my hands kind of the whole thing, okay, just to be sure. And then I got a clip on that part too, and that's ready to go. If you're doing this for a craft show, you might want to do 8 or 10 of these. You might want to get a 3-foot long dowel rod and do the whole thing. You may want to just soak this entire thing. You can do that. It's okay. I will tell you that if this stuff gets wet, it will straighten out again. And as it hangs around, it may lose some of its pizzazz depending on how long you dried it, how wet you got it, whatever. You can experiment to your heart's content with that. But there's your curly cues finished, and here are your curly cues in waiting. Okay, I think we're ready to crochet our pumpkin, so I'm going to get this mess out of the way and let's go on to the next part. Okay, kiddos, we have set our curly cues aside to dry, and now we are ready to make our pumpkin. I've got my medium weight yarn. I'm going to make a magic circle, which for me means I'm going to hold the yarn in my thumb and my forefinger and my index finger, wrap it around twice. I now got 2 wraps around my hand. Take my H hook or 5mm hook, go underneath the first loop, grab the second one, pull it through, pull it off my fingers, hold on to it, and I'm ready to go. I'm going to make a chain 1 that counts as my first stitch, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoops, I didn't get both loops. It's real helpful if you catch both loops on your magic circle. It helps catch that yarn in so it doesn't come out. And that, I believe, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tighten up my magic circle. Now, I have made my first row in my pumpkin with my first 6 stitches. Now I'm going to double that. I'm going to put 12 stitches in the second row. That's going to make it increase and get bigger. This would be a really tiny little pumpkin. So we're going to make it bigger. I use a stitch marker. I'm going to take an odd colored thread and put it in front of my 6th stitch, and that will help me to remember as I go around the pumpkin when I get to the end of a row. So I'm going to start in my very first stitch over here, and I'm going to crochet 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and 2 in each one around. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Bonus Mom counts to 12. Okay, now I pull my stitch marker over in front of my 12th stitch. Now, a thing about anything that you are crocheting in a circle, this applies to pumpkins, beanies, placemats, bags, anything that you are making, even a flat thing, a rug, a round rug. There is a mathematic progression to that will make it even and make it, after you block it, nice and flat, or will make your hat have that good cup shape that you want if you're doing a beanie. You use a sequence of increasing. Because we started with 6 single crochets in the first row, now we've gone to 6 times 2 in the second row and have 12. In the third row, we're going to evenly add 6 more stitches to get to 18. And you can follow from there. The fourth row will have 24. The fifth row will have 30, the 6th row will have 36, the 7th row will have 42, and the 8th row will have 48. And that's as big as we're going to go for this pumpkin. So now, a way that I do this, and everybody has their own way, so I'm just telling you that I'm telling you Bonus Mom's way, is I do my first 2 stitches in the very first stitch. So I'm always saying 1, 2, and there's 2 stitches in there, and then 3, and then 1, 2, and 3. So the 1, 2s, if I'm counting in my head, are a 1 or a 2, I know I'm doing 2 stitches in 1. 1, 2, 3, and all the way around. I have finished my 2nd row of increase. I have added 6 stitches. I now have 18. I put my yarn holder in front of the 18th stitch, and now I'm going to go to 24. So it's going to be 1, 2. Remember how the 1, 2s always happen in the same stitch, and then 3 in the next, and 4 in the next. So 1, 2 in the same stitch, then 3 in one, and 4 in one. And then 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4, all the way around. Now I'm at the end of my 4th row, and I have 24 stitches. 4 times 6, 24. We're getting good with the math, huh? And you all know what comes next, don't you? We're going to 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5. Wrap my stitch markers so I don't lose track. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, those of you who crochet all the time are probably way ahead of me, and you know how to do the next several rows, but I'm going to explain it at the beginning of each row anyway, and then I'll jump to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we have 30 stitches in our circle. I'm going to lay it down flat where you can see it, and you'll kind of notice that it is actually a 6-sided deal. That's because we're increasing in even increments all the way around. When it's time to tie our string around the pumpkin and we're taking our needle in and out, it's going to be easy to see where we are because of those 6 little bit different looks on our pumpkin. I am ready to begin row number 6. I'm going to fold my stitch marker over. I'm going to do my little 1, 2 number again, and I'm going to count then to 6. So that's 1, 2 in the same stitch, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Six times 6 is 36, so that's where we are. I'm ready to pull my stitch marker over. We're getting close to being done as far as increases are concerned. This time I go to 7 stitches. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way around. I am to the 8th row, which is the last row that I'm going to do that has any increases in it. That will make a pumpkin roughly this size. If you're using an H hook, oh, it's about 5 inches, I guess, in diameter, and you're using medium yarn. The yarn that you use and the size hook that you use and the strength of your tension will determine the size pumpkin that you're making. And you can make any size pumpkin you want. You could stop right here. You could go to 54 inches, any multiple of 6. If you want to have 8 sections instead of 6, then you would start out with 8 in the middle and you would add 8 every additional row. So what you have here is the basics to make a flat thing, or eventually a cup-like thing or a ball-like thing, with the same theory of increasing stitches. There are some patterns out there that will make you add more stitches in different places because they're going for something different. For this one, we're on track to make a nice round pumpkin, and I'm going to do row number 8 same way I did all the others. Wrap my stitch marker in front of the last stitch of the row before, and then I go 1 and 2 in the same stitch, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, each in individual stitches. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Now I'm at the end of my increases, and I have my nice little hexagon going here. BonusMom, it's a nice flat thing, but gee, I kind of wanted a round thing. How are we going to do that? Very simply, we're not going to add any more stitches. From here on up until row 16 or so, give and take whatever you want to do, we are just going to crochet 1 stitch in each stitch. So I went ahead and pulled my stitch marker out so I know that I'm in a new part of the project. I'm going to put it though in front of the last stitch of the previous row, and now I'm just going to single stitch this until I get it as big as I want. Go to row 16 if you want to have kind of a squat pumpkin. I'm showing you from the side on this one so you can see. Go to row 24, 36, 48. If you want a tall pumpkin, you just do as many rows of stitches that you want. You just don't add any, and that will give you the body of your pumpkin. It is important to note also that as you do this and you start to make the cup shape or the beanie shape, this probably for a newborn baby would be just about the size of a beanie, you will lose the hexagon points because now you're not adding any more stitches, and it will be a round beanie or cup. Something else to point out, when I get around the row, you will see it as I come around a row or two. Your stitch marker, as you end each row, will continue to move this way. And I should have shown that beforehand. Your stitches tend to go in a direction. If you're right-handed, they go off this way. If you're left-handed, they probably will go off the other way, depending on how a left-hander crochets. That is because we are actually crocheting, get this where you can see it, in the top of a stitch, but the actual stitch is right there. So because I'm right-handed, the top of that stitch is just to the left of it. And that's why, if you look at that and you think, wait a minute, my stitch marker keeps kind of moving to one side, it's supposed to. Okay, I'm going to crochet until I catch you up at the end of row 16. And I am just doing 1 stitch in every crochet stitch all the way around. So I'll meet you back here when I'm to 16 rows. You take as long as you need to get to as many rows as you want. So here we are. I'm at the end of row 16 right there, and you see the shape I have. Yeah, but BonusMom, yeah. If we're going to make a pumpkin, we're going to have to decrease just like we increased. And I also, having my stitch marker in here, I'm able to show you about how the stitch marker travels across my work. And that is to be expected and don't be alarmed by it. Again, it's because the loop that you are crocheting in is immediately to the left, if you're right-handed, of the stitch you just crocheted. So we are going to decrease stitches. Now, I don't decrease stitches exactly the way that I increase them, which means doing it the first of every single row of every single set of 8 it would be, to take it from 8 stitches to 7 stitches, because all of those decreased stitches in the same place are just somehow uglier than the increased stitches. So I mix it up a little bit. You do whatever you are comfortable with, just so you get them evenly placed. So what I'm going to do on row number 1, I'm going to take the first 8 stitches and I'm going to turn them into 7 stitches. So my first 6 stitches look just the same as every other stitch that I've done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And notice I went under both loops of my top of my stitch, and there's my first stitch. 6 stitches. But now I'm going to take these next 2 stitches and I'm going to turn them into 1 stitch. In order to do that, and for the neatest look, trying it a bunch of different ways that I've tried, I'm going to go underneath the front loop only of my 7th stitch and back out through the front loop only of my 8th stitch. I hope you can see that. It almost makes a V on my crochet hook. Yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. And now I have turned 8 stitches into 7 stitches. So now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to do 1, 2, going underneath both loops of my stitch, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to go underneath the front part of loop of row crochet stitch number 7 and back out through the front loop only of crochet stitch number 8, or actually that would be 15 and 16. Yarn over and pull through, and I have turned 2 stitches into 1. I'm going to show you that one more time. 1, 2, through both stitches, both parts of the stitch at the top, 3, 4, am I in C? Yeah, okay, 5, 6, I'm trying to hold this up where you can see it really clearly. Front loop only of 7, come back out through front loop only of 8, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Now I am at almost the end of my first row of decrease, and you can kind of tell it's already starting to slip in just a little bit, and that's going to continue for each row. The 7th and final stitch that takes 2 stitches to make 1 on this row is right where my yarn is, my yarn marker is. So through the front loops only of stitch 7 and 8, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through. I have now gone down to 42 stitches. So now I want to turn my 7 stitches into 6 stitches, but I don't want my decrease to be in exactly the same place. So I'm going to get tricky. This time I'm going to do 2 stitches. Okay, now I'm going to decrease, and I'm going to call this the first stitch of my row. I'm going to ignore these 2 for the moment. This is only as far as counting is concerned. So I decrease, that's stitch 1. And then I go to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And my decrease is back here, so now my decreases are in 2 different places. So I'm going to do it again for my first stitch. I'm going to go through the front of one loop and the front of the next loop and turn it into 1 stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now that's a bonus mom thing because I don't like all of my decrease stitches in the same place. Sometimes I get more of a hole where I can see the stuffing through there, and personally I don't like it. You do it however you want is fine. The main thing is that you're taking a row of 7 stitches and turning them into 6. I'm going to catch you back up close to the end of the row that I'm working on. I'm back again, and I'm about to do the next to last decrease of this row. So I'm going to go under the front loop only and under the front loop only, yarn over, draw through, yarn over, draw through. Now then, I have one more increase to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And do you remember how I started that with 2 stitches? So if I go 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm right back to where I needed to be to get my 36 stitches. As you can see, I really can't lay this out flat on my table anymore because I'm beginning to make my pumpkin shape, as you can see. It's starting to look like what would ultimately be a ball as I continue to decrease. I'm going to do one more row where I turn my stitch pulled out, excuse me. Turn this from 36 stitches to 30, and then I'm going to go ahead and stuff it a little bit. If I keep decreasing and sew it all up, I have no way to get the stuffing in there, and in order to get the stuffing in there easily, I kind of tend to stuff it a little bit as the hole starts to get smaller. So I'm going to do one more row, and then I'm going to pull out my polyfill and I'm going to stuff a little bit. So this time I can go back to the same way that I was doing things, which is I'm going to 30 stitches. So it's 1, oh, forgot to put my stitch, or my stitch marker fell out. Let me get it again. There we go. Okay, ready to start. Keeping that stitch marker in is really handy, and since I'm doing it with yarn, it's when you pull it out, it's completely invisible that it was ever there, unless maybe you use black yarn on a white thing, and then that could be a little bit tricky. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now I reduce. Front loops of the next 2 stitches, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and I have 5 stitches out of 6. And I'm going to do that all the way to the end of the row. This is my last decrease for this row, which gives me 30 stitches. I'm going to wrap my stitch marker over here, and then I got out my polyfill, whatever kind you like, cotton, acrylic, there's all kinds of this stuff out there. I'm going to lightly stuff. I don't want it clear up to the top yet because one of the things about polyfill is that it catches in your stitches and then you got white stuff floating around. Okay, that'll do it for right now. I pull my yarn out there. Yeah, starting to look like a pumpkin, isn't it? You're liking it? Oh, and look, if you look on this row, and I'm going to bring it up really close. Let me get it turned the right way. Do you see the lines from when I increased? See that? You can see those babies going out there. It's going to be so easy to use your yarn to wrap around this, tug on it a little bit, tighten it up, and you're going to have your pumpkin sections. Now I'm going from 30 to 24 stitches. So I'm going to decrease every 4, and it's that same thing. I don't want my decreases in the same place. So I'm going to decrease my very first stitch this time. Wait a minute. I don't have my tension right in my hands. One of the hardest things to learn in crocheting is what tension works for you. I gotta have all this. Some people crochet tight. Some people hold their crochet hooks like this. Some people hold them like this. Me, I'm digging in there. Yeah, I'm brutal with the yarn. What can I say? Okay, gonna turn the first 2 stitches into 1, and then 2, 2, 3, and 4. And we're getting very close right now, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, and on it goes. We are now one of my least favorite parts of the entire project of making the pumpkin, and that is starting to get the polyfill in there firmly. That's part of it. And then the other part is now my hole is getting smaller, and the room I have to maneuver with my hook is getting littler, and it gets harder and harder to crochet those 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So bear with me. I'm going to go around this 1 stitch at a time and do the best that I can. Follow with me. Got to shove some more polyfill in there because I want my pumpkin to be nice and juicy. And it's going to get harder and harder to put more polyfill in there. So I'm going to take the time to kind of do it now. There's no like so many ounces of polyfill or so many you know, it's not. It's do it how you want it, as lightly or as tightly stuffed as you want. If you happen to be using cotton stuffing, your whole pumpkin will be firmer. The acrylic has more gushy give to it. Okay. That is going to be enough, I think, to satisfy me. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Now, we have to turn these 24 stitches into 18 stitches, and it's going to get harder. It also, because this is the part where the pumpkin is going to have the stem and the 3 leaves and the curlicues. You're just not going to see it, so it almost doesn't matter where you reduce your stitches unless you accidentally turn your pumpkin over and you put all your decorations on this side. But this is the prettiest side of your pumpkin, the one down here, so I suggest you let it be the bottom because it will show the most. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Okay, now we're going to decrease every 3rd stitch. I'm getting started right now. We're going to decrease every 3rd stitch. So 1, and then 2 and 3. And then 1, and 2 and 3. And then my 1 stitch in 2 stitches for 1, 2, and 3. Bonus Mom's edge is going to pop out any minute. I do find this frustrating to do. And one, 2, and 3. And the worst is actually yet to come. 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3. Okay, now next to last row, we're going to do every other one, and basically I'm done with my stitch marker because at this point it's kind of every crafter for themselves. I'm not worried so much about where my decreased stitches are. It's all going to be hidden by leaves and stem, and it's hard enough to get these things done. So I'm going to do 1, and then my second stitch is going to be my decrease. So decrease on 2. One. It also gets easier to do 2 stitches in the same stitch. 1 and decrease on 2. 1 and decrease on 2. This is the point at which some of your polyfill is going to catch in your stitches too if you're not careful. 1 and then the single stitch in 2. And 1 and 2. And if I'm lucky, I'm at 12 stitches, and if I'm not, I don't really care. So deal with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh my gosh. I'm a lucky bird. Now we decrease every single stitch. We're going from 12 to 6. This part is not as much fun as the increase. It's very awkward angles, and since I have arthritis in my hand, I gotta tell you that I can't do 10 of these in a day because I'm very tensely holding my hands and it gets a little uncomfortable. If I end up like I'm about to catching the whole stitch, that's okay too. Okay, I'm coming up on the last 2 stitches, and like I said, it's every crafter for themselves. Here I am. Okay, it doesn't look very pretty. See that? There's actually 6 little stitches there. Not pretty. This is what we're going to do. We're calling it done though, because again, it's going to be underneath our decorations. I need to leave a really, really long string. I usually leave like a yard's worth or something, okay? I laid my scissors to the side. So I'm clipping my yarn. I got a lot of yarn. I'm going to reach through my final loop, grab my yarn, pull it all the way through to give myself plenty of yarn to work with. And there we are, folks. But I want my pumpkin to have pretty sections, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to thread my yarn into this great big needle. This one is a good one too, whatever works for you. And I want to get rid of the part of my pumpkin. Can you see it? Yeah, that sticks out the top that's ugly. So I'm going to go back down through the middle. I've caught it so that it won't unravel, but I'm going to go right through the middle of my pumpkin, turn it over, and come out the very bottom. Want to turn that up there so you can see it? Okay. And if I pull it, I'm actually pulling the ugly part of my pumpkin down inside the pumpkin. Okay. Now I'm going for my 6 sections. To really make them look nice, you want to continually go through the exact top and bottom. So a nice long needle is really beneficial. So I'm going to wrap it right around that line I already have, go down through the center again, and come back up through. And then I'm going to pull it. You can pull it as tight as you want, being careful not to actually make your pumpkin wrinkled. You just want it gunched a little bit. And then pick another one of your nice lines that you can see, wrap around the pumpkin, down through the top and out through the bottom. That's a place that your really long needle will come in handy. Okay, let me find another line. There's one right there. Go around, and it's the same process again. If you had started with 8 stitches, you would end up with 8 sections. And you could certainly do that. We're getting there, folks. It's starting to look good. Look at that. Let me find my nice lines again. It will be easier for you to see that when you are crocheting your own instead of trying to look at mine on camera. A little bit of practice will help you get the tension that you want to make sure your sections are the same. And actually, because this long string of yarn is actually connected to your pumpkin, if you don't love what you have and you want to redo it, you can. Just pull it out and go again. There we go. Yeah, there. Okay. I got my pumpkin sections. Looking good, you think? Okay, so back to where I was. I'm just going to catch a little bit of the pumpkin yarn, and I'm going to witch stitch it a time or two so that my tension ends up being good. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I don't have to hold it so tight anymore. A little bit of stuffing popped out. Okay, then that's the nice part of my pumpkin. This is the ugly part. Going to come back up through one more time. And then I'm going to do the same thing at the top. Catch a little bit of the pumpkin, loop my hook through my yarn, do it a time or two, and then I'm going to cut my yarn, get rid of all this excess yarn. I had way more than I needed, but I always want to have enough. So there we go. So here we are with our pumpkin. So kiddos, I have finished my pumpkin. Here it is, all ready for a nice stem and leaves. And I'm going to crochet the stem and the leaves. The leaves are kind of my own little twist on things because they're connected in one piece, and that just means I don't have as many pieces of yarn to worry about. So I'm going to show you how to make this and how to do the stem. For the leaves, you just need some yarn. And I'm using my 5mm H hook again. And I'm going to start with that magic circle again, which is hold my yarn with my thumb and forefinger and index finger and wrap around so I have 2 wraps across the top. Hook underneath the front one, catch the back one, pull through, pull it, hold it, and pull it all off my fingers. And I have my magic circle. And I'm going to crochet my very first leaf. It's a very simple progression of 2 single crochets, 2 half double crochets, 2 double crochets, 2 double triple crochets, a picot, and then I reverse 2 triples, 2 doubles, 2 half doubles, and 2 singles. So I'm going to show you that now. My chain 1 makes my first single crochet, second single crochet, 2 half double crochets, two double crochets, let me try that again. 2 triple double crochets, which may be one stitch you're a little bit less familiar with. You wrap the yarn around your hook twice. Go into your magic circle, pull up a loop. Wrap and pull through 2. Wrap and pull through 2. And wrap and pull through 2. And do it again. A picot, you might be a little bit less familiar with. Chain 3. Stick your hook back through the beginning chain, yarn over, pull through the chain and the loop on your hook. And that's going to make a little point to your leaf. Now we're going to do 2 double triples, which are wrap your beginning yarn around your hook at the beginning of the stitch. So wrap around twice underneath the magic circle, yarn and pull up, yarn and pull up, yarn and pull up, and yarn and pull up. 2 double triples, 2 double crochets. I'm going to tighten up my magic circle just a little bit. 2 half double crochets. 2 single crochets. Now I could finish this off. I'm going to pull my magic circle up nice and tight. There's my leaf. Pulled up my magic circle. That might not look the most in the world like a pumpkin leaf, but it happens to be one of my favorite leaves, okay? So it's the one I'm going to use because basically I think it's pretty. You may use the leaf that you like, including artificial leaves. But I want 3 leaves. I don't want just 1. 1 wouldn't be bad, but I want 3. Yeah, because I'm greedy. And I don't want to have to mess with 6 pieces of yarn. So I'm just going to chain, I think 4 more. Could be 5. And then I'm going to pretend like that one chain right there is my first single crochet for my next leaf. Odd numbers are always better for things. If I do a 4th leaf, it's going to look very square, and so that's why I went with the 3. 3 is a magic number that way. At this point, I'm going to slip stitch back in my leaf, and then yarn over one more time, pull it through, and there are my 3 leaves. Now, if you were sewing that to something, you probably would leave a long enough piece of yarn to sew it to whatever, and we could sew it to this, but we don't really need to because we're going to make a stem that's going to fit over top of it. So what I'm going to do, because it's going to be invisible, is I'm just going to tie a knot in all this, okay, to secure it, and then I'm going to cut my extra pieces of yarn away. So that's done, and that's ready to go in the tippy top of my pumpkin. Turn it around so front side is up, and there's my 3 leaves. You can kind of set them however you want. If you want them all the way around, if you want to gunch them to what size, that's up to you. You can play with that however you want. We're going to set that aside. Now we're going to get our brown yarn. Like I said, this doesn't take much yarn at all, almost any size scrap you want. You might decide to use a different color green. You could do tan or gold, whatever. Could be pink. You get to pick the color. This one's very simple. Another magic circle. Have you been practicing these? Getting good at them now? And because I'm consistent, 6 single crochets. I like a fat stem. You can do whatever you want. So I'm going to do another row where I do 2 single crochets in each stitch. So I'm counting to 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Oh, wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And I have not even counted, pulling my beginning stitch up pretty tight, cutting off the excess. I haven't even counted from here. I just make a stem. I just start to do the same number of stitches. I don't add anymore. I went from 6 to 12. You could go from 4 to 8. You could, depending on how big your pumpkin is, you could go to 18. You get to do whatever you want to. 12 works for me. And I'm going to do, I don't know, 5 or 6 rows of just 12 stitches. I'm not sure. I won't know till I'm done. I'm just going to make what I think looks like a wonderful, fat, gunchy stem. So I'm about done with my stem. I think this is a pretty good length on it. Maybe gonna do a few more. To finish it off, I'm gonna do a couple of slip stitches. And then I'm gonna yarn over and pull through. And this time I am gonna leave myself some yarn because I'm gonna sew this onto my pumpkin. I don't want my stem to be flat and icky, have no personality, so I'm gonna put just a little bit of polyfill up in there so my stem has a life of its own. It hasn't been cut off the vine for so long, it still has some life. Okay, so now I am ready to connect this all to my pumpkin. But wait a minute, there's no curly cues on there. I could add the curly cues after I actually did that on this pumpkin, or, and here's my curly cue. Remember how we were putting it around a knitting needle or a dowel rod? It was wet, but we let it dry. All we got to do is pull a piece off of there and cut off our end that doesn't look very pretty where we had the clasp on it. And I got a choice. I can put it right through there, and I think that's what I'm gonna do. And then I don't even have to sew it down because sewing this over top of it will make it all stick together. Spread my leaves out a little bit to one side. Let's see, how are we gonna do this? And then I'm gonna have that kind of go that way. Yeah, that works for me. Thread my needle. And I used to have a lot of trouble trying to get all of that fuzzy stuff to go through my needle till I saw somebody on a tutorial. Aren't tutorials wonderful? Fold the yarn over so it was flatter and then push it through. And it works like a charm. Did you see that? I'm going to do it again. Just take your yarn. It probably won't work this time. It'll make a liar out of me. Fold it over so you have that nice little loop, and then push it through the big hole in your big fat darning needle. Ta-da! Okay, so now what I'm gonna do, and you know what? If this is tighter together than you want, then chain more stitches between your leaves to give yourself more room if you would like. And then, and this is going to be really hard for me to show you online, and I don't think I really can because I'm going to have to hold this right up next to my eyes where I can see. Going to hold the whole thing. Now you can pin it in a couple of places if you want to. Let me start over here. I'm just going to put it down here, and I'm just going to catch it to the orange pumpkin and crochet around, and stitch around. You do want to catch it to the orange pumpkin though, not the leaves, because that will actually make your stem loose. Coming around the corner now, sewing over top, trying to miss the batting, catching. That's what's is catching the twine curly cues. Pushing my batting up in there. Catching the orange of the pumpkin. Got the orange of the pumpkin. I think I'll come up through the hole in the middle of my leaf. Catch my stem. Uh-oh. Oh, messed up on my stem because the polyfill caught it. Maybe I put too much polyfill in my stem. You be the judge. Let me cut it off of there. There we go. Okay. Doing good. Go down, catch the pumpkin. Coming around the home stretch. When I make it all the way around, have I? Yeah, I have. Then I'm going to do one more stitch just to make life difficult, just torture myself. And then I'm going to do a neat thing. I'm going to stitch, push my yarn clear down through the pumpkin, the needle out someplace else, pull it a little bit, cut it close to the pumpkin, but don't cut the pumpkin. And my pumpkin is done. Look at that. I think I did great. Now, if the curly cues are longer than you want, yeah, I might take a little bit off of that one. There you go. Now those two pumpkins, I'm the one, me, moi, I did both of them, and I basically did them the same way, but you know what? They're actually a little bit two different yarns, done at two different times. They look a little bit different, don't they? This one's a little bit wider and flatter. This one's a little bit taller and gunchier. Probably the different yarns. Hard to tell, but what do you think? I think we did great. I hope you liked my pumpkins. I hope you enjoyed visiting with me today while we worked on this. And hey, I'm going to think about it and see what I can come up with next. You all have a great day, kiddos. Keep crocheting.